Hey everybody, I have a video here for you today. Now I'm working on a couple different videos. My next in my Egypt series is coming up very soon. But I had an email a few days ago from a gentleman in Sweden. Asked me if I have ever heard of the Stenar site or the Ale stones. And I had not. I had seen them on a list, but I had never looked into this site. This is the very tip of Sweden. And the first thing you notice here is this stone formation is in the shape of a ship, and that's what I have talked about a lot on my channel. The boat is very important in the afterlife stories of many cultures. Of course, Egypt probably most famously. I've talked a lot about boats in the afterlife stories, and it seems to be more cross-culture the more I look into it, but here is this shape of this stone formation, and clearly the first thing I noticed, it was in the shape of a ship. And that seems to come from the Vikings, but let's go down here and take a look. Let's go down here. Google Street View gives you a good look at this site. These boulders weigh up to 2 tons apiece, but when they were actually erected in this ship formation is still a bit of a mystery, and we're going to read about that. But what really confounds us is right out in this area, there was an ancient dolmen, maybe 5,500 years old, that was covered by a little mound, and then just time and history. And that was just discovered about 7 years ago. So there appears to be 2 different periods of history here, most likely, but it's still a bit of a mystery. But let's just read, look at some alignments. Now I found this website written by Andrew Kobos, and I thought it was pretty good here, so let's just take a look at this one. But here is just a brief introduction. It says a monumental stone formation is made of 59 large boulders set in a layout of a ship, 67 meters in length and 19 meters in breadth. And it gives the location here. It says the view from the Ale Stenar offers an open 180-degree sea horizon and simultaneously an open 180-degree land horizon. The Ale Stenar formation has since fascinated me as to what it might have been in the very distant past. This matter appears unexplained in the year 2001, when not too many ancient mysteries have still remained unsolved. It says, according to some, the name Als or Ale meant sanctuary in the ancient Nordic language, and I don't know if I'm even pronouncing that right, but it says, according to others, it meant a ridge, and that would certainly correspond well to the topographic location of the Ale Stenar on a 37-meter high ridge of the Baltic shore. Ale was once understood to be the name of a Viking chieftain sometime between 700 and 1000 of the current era. There is, however, no known historical record of such a Viking name. These were the so-called Dark Ages, and very scarce written records are known about this period of history. Almost all we know about this time comes from archaeology. It says another legend had it that about in the year 1000 a Viking chieftain, Olav Tryggvason, was buried on this ridge together with his ship, Oscar Montilius, who lived in the 1800s, a famous scholar in Swedish prehistoric heathen times. When discussing in 1917 the shape of the Ale ship, suggested that it was a collective monument for the Vikings who had perished in their voyages and conquerors. It says in the very ambiguous interpretation of the Ale name alone, the whole controversy surrounding the Ale Stenar is poignantly reflected. But we have early written records coming from a few hundred years ago of this place. This one comes from 1777, a drawing of the formation, and here this one comes from 1853 with some notes here on the bottom that I cannot make out. A number of scientific publications on the Ale Stenar in Swedish, authored and co-authored mainly by the archaeologist Professor Marta Stromberg of the University of Lund, and Dr. Kurt Rosland, an astronomer of the Chalmers Technical University in Gothenburg, are not easily available to the public, even in Swedish. It is quite a disappointing state of affairs. It seems to me that some detailed and scientifically sound monographs on the Ale Stenar formation should be available. But it says research here done since 1989 by a multidisciplinary team led by Marta Stromberg has so far not been published in a systematic and complete manner, not to mention a detailed interpretation of the archaeological finds. It says the dates I come across for erecting the Ale Stenar vary in range of over 4,000 years. So the exact date when these stones were erected here Well, there's a range of 4,000 years from 3600 BC to 600 of the current era. It is not surprising that if it has not been established when the Stenar were erected, no one knows, to a reasonable certainty, who did erect these boulders and for what purpose. Now this is Live Science, a Swedish Stonehenge, Stone Age tomb may predate English site, and here is some excavation work that was going on here in 2012, and they found a tomb that was over 5,000 years old. So this just adds to the mystery here. Let's just read a little. It says a 5,500-year-old tomb, possibly belonging to a Stone Age chieftain, has been unearthed at a megalithic monument in the shape of a ship called Stenar, Ailstones. Here, archaeologist Bjorn Wellebom clears the modern brim of the dolmen of several upright stones with horizontal boulder on top, in which a body would be placed. And here is a 45-minute lecture I found on this site, but it's not done in English. But they have some diagrams here and some pictures. I don't know if you can see this very well, but here is the ship structure, and then here is that large dolmen that they think is over 5,000 years old, with the central rectangular burial tomb in it here. That was all covered by earth and time. Now there really isn't a good look at what was uncovered as far as this Neolithic dolmen type tomb that was found here, but here is a look at another dolmen found in Sweden that I'm assuming this place fairly resembled. And one of the theories is that maybe the Vikings or a later culture used some of the stones from this Neolithic burial to use to form the ship-like formation. The buried structure, it says, based on the layout, the dolmen may be up to 5,500 years old, possibly older than Stonehenge. The large burial chamber likely belonged to a local chieftain or the head of a clan during the Neolithic era, he said. Because there was little evidence from the outer ring, the researchers aren't sure what it was used for or whether it was as old as the dolmen. Thousands of dolmen sites are scattered throughout Scandinavia. Though later civilizations stole many of the boulders to build churches and other structures, he said, the giant rock monument suggests that even our Stone Age ancestors had a sense of posterity and prominence, said Magnus Andersson of the Swedish National Heritage Board. The new tomb also shows that this particular spot, with its dramatic cliffs overlooking the Baltic Sea, has inspired people in many different ages, he said. The scenic place on the ridge must have attracted people in all times. It shows that people over a long period build their monuments and perform their ceremonies on the same sites. But one of the first things that I noticed when looking at this is it was in the form of a boat. And of course the boat is very important in the Egyptian afterlife story. And did you know out in front of some of the pyramid structures in Egypt there are trenches cut in the ground in the shape of boats? There aren't trenches that boats were supposed to be placed into. There are actual trenches carved in the shape of boats, and I mentioned a few of those, and one is up at Abu Rawash. I just wanted to check if this was aligned to the winter solstice, an important day in the afterlife story. Well, let's just take a look. Now here is that line extended through the center of the ship, looking out to the horizon here. The date, December 21st, the winter solstice. Where does that sun rise on that very important date? Is it in alignment with the ship? Well, it certainly seems to be that case. Now these stone formations in the form of ships are very much Viking, and here are some other ones that are found throughout Scandinavia. This is Atlas Obscura, and I will leave the link below. But I remember seeing one of these Viking stone ship formations on somebody's video that was in Denmark. I can't remember whose it was. It might have been JJ's. I just can't remember. But certainly boats seem to be important in the Viking afterlife story, and I have showed it in native cultures, the mound builder culture, of course, Egypt, and some other ones. The boat certainly seems to be, just like a lot of cultures from the ancient world, the boat seems to be attached with the afterlife. And here are just a few stone ship type formations that are found in Scandinavia, and this is Atlas Obscura, and I will leave this link below. But the dates coming back, one from 3600 BC, and then from others, 600 of the current era. There are not a lot of really solid answers about this place. But one thing I want to show you here, you can kind of see on this pic that during the day, shadows are cast, and this is one theory, that this was actually a very accurate astronomical calendar based on the shadows at different times of the year and different times of the day. So was this a huge astronomical clock in the shape of a ship? Was a ship built because it symbolized something very important from the Afterlife story? Was it all of the above? When was this actually erected? And there are just tons of questions here. Now, it seems people have been here honoring this site for well over 5,000 years, and this goes well back into history. But when these stones were actually erected, and who was actually buried, and that seems to be an important dolmen that was buried by a mound in time, and then it was kind of lost to history. So it seems this is another case of one culture using a sacred space as a very important sacred space themselves. So if you have any answers for this place, or you have anything to add to this, please leave it in the comment section. This seems to be a very ancient site, but then we have cultures using it. So that kind of muddles history when you have different dates, because that really confuses things as to when these things were actually erected and for what purpose, by what culture. But it seems cross-culture, the boats were very important in the Afterlife story. But I found this place pretty interesting, and here's a look from a 1914 book at what these stones look like, and they were kind of falling apart, and they had been in the earth for who knows how long. So there was a little restoration work done here, but there was some good documentation, and the most any of these were repositioned was like a meter off of where they originally were, so the alignment still works in my opinion. Here's a look, looking out over the sea here from the stones. Here's what they call the stern boulder, and the small rudder boulder right next to it. And this is what they call the bow boulder, and you notice this is where they notice some cup-like formations on some of these stones here. And each of these boulders is numbered, and here are some more cup-like formations on a boulder here. Star patterns, maybe? Well, that's one theory. And I just wanted to show you this pic. This comes from a Viking cemetery in northern Denmark, where you have many ship-like formations here. But I just don't remember seeing one so perfectly aligned in such a big site. I will leave this link below. I found it to be a good website, but here is a pic on the winter solstice, and I think that theory really has proven to be true about this site, and people have mentioned it, but then other people kind of go against it, and I really don't know why. So that is a look at the Stenar site, the Ale stones in the form of a ship on the southern tip of Sweden here, near Jasted and Kaseberga. I think that is how you pronounce these. Sandy is another town here. But if you are from this area, I'd love to hear from you. But it seems we have a lot of ancient sites in this part of the world, and I haven't covered it on this channel for a long, long time, not too far from Copenhagen. But this is a part of the world I haven't talked about in a long time. We are spanning the globe, bringing a lot of different periods of ancient history to light on this channel. I also like to say I watched the British Open here from Ireland today, Northern Ireland, Portrush Country Club, and the Giant's Causeway, and that whole scene there I thought was pretty cool. Love to visit there sometime. But that is the Ale stones. Ale Stenar is the name of this site from the southern tip of Sweden. I just thought that was very interesting. Hope you did too, and you all have a very nice day.